from the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Have you ever been confined to the indoors with a small child? I have, and it is not easy. As the cold weather drags on, we have ideas for entertaining little ones, beating cabin fever, and keeping everyone sane.
For little kids and for those who can use screens, yes, parents have to absolutely forgive themselves for needing a break, for taking some time off. Again, be the example. If you look up and realize that you've been on your device for 3 hours and haven't really interacted with anyone, then that's exactly what your children see.
Welcome to Healthy Children, the podcast for parents from the American Academy of Pediatrics. I'm Dr. Edith Bracho-Sanchez. I am a pediatrician and a mama figuring it out. This is a judgment-free space where all questions are good questions and the answers will hopefully be even better. Let's get started. Today we have with us Dr. Jeff Hutchinson, who is a clinical associate professor of pediatrics at Texas A&M and an adolescent medicine physician working at People's Community Clinic in Austin, Texas. Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Edith. It's so good to be here today.
It's so nice to see you. I know people who are listening at home don't get to see you, but it really is so nice to see you and have this conversation today. So I want to start, Jeff, with a confession. I wish I could tell you that I get cabin fever after many days of being inside. But to be honest, one day with my 3-year-old at home without going outside, and I'm already like, someone please come help me. I don't think I'm alone. Am I, Jeff?
You are not alone. And I'm surprised you can make it a full day or even a few hours with a 3-year-old because they are so full of energy, so full of life. It's wonderful when you need it, but it can also just drain the life out of you because you're trying to entertain them. So no, you're absolutely not alone.
It's a lot, Jeff. It's a lot. So help us out, starting with how should we think about these days? I personally have made up things like calling days inside, quote unquote, lazy days. Maybe I should call them rest days. I don't know. The lazy day has really stuck with my toddler. And we give ourselves a pass on the pressures to get things done and just relax and connect with each other. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
That's a great point. All of us as parents and as people, we want to feel productive, like what we're doing is meaningful. And when you have a day alone with your toddler and it feels like the structure is gone, it really does feel like you're wasting time, but it's not. Think about when we were young. What are some of the best memories we have? It's when we were spending time with our parents, with our family, making crafts. It's not the time that was structured. It's the time that we remember making that connection with our family. So I would say that, yes, that feeling is strong. Yes, that feeling of having to do something can seem overwhelming. But what kids remember is what they are doing with you. So each moment you spend with them is a memory in the making.
I love that perspective. And Jeff, I do want to ask you the specifics of exactly what we're going to do inside, but I want to follow up for 1 second on a word that you used in your answer, which is feeling productive and the pressure to feel productive. It is so hard to fight, Jeff.
It is.
I have to tell you, as a mom who also cares deeply about many things in this world, it is so hard to fight. And what I would love to hear from you as a veteran dad whose kids are older now, give us a little bit of perspective on this quote unquote productivity and how it plays out in the long term.
Sure, absolutely. With technology now, it's so very easy to binge watch a show or to be in front of a pad or computer. And then you look back at the end of the day and you say, well, what have I done? I've just been in front of the TV or not really done anything. So that feeling of looking back and being able to say what I've done is where I would say we should go from here. The best way to feel like those cabin fever days are not wasted is when you can look back and say, look what we made. So think about a craft. Think about making a stop motion animation with your little 3-year-old. Think about drawing something. Think about decorating an entire wall. And at the end of the day, you look back and say, see what we've done. And I think that really helps to defeat that fear of I didn't do anything today.
So let's get back to the specific things we're going to do inside, because it's easy to say we're going to relax, we're going to give ourselves a pass. But it's hard in the moment to come up with something to entertain these kids, right? So let's talk maybe by age group, starting with the little ones. Let's say kids under the age of 1. What can we do with them, Jeff? What can we do?
Under the age of 1, kids do not need entertaining, right? They really need to be fed, changed, hugged, loved. All the things that babies do is what we do. So I think most moms and parents of those newborns and under 1, your day is really the same, whether you're snowed in or not. You try to get the showers in, you try to do the things you need to do. That age group is really not much different whether you're allowed to go outside or not, other than the fact that when we go outside into nature is always cool and great. And you may not be able to do that, but time with the babies is time with the babies.
Yeah, it really is. So let's move on to those toddlers in the 2 to 5-year-old category, Jeff. What can we do? And that's the category we fall into currently.
Yes. I always tell people that if I could have picked an age to specialize in, it would have been those 2 to 5-year-olds because they have so much curiosity. They have so many questions. The world is full of wonder for them. And that's where I would say to lean into. How can you make, the time magical? But also know that you don't have to fill every single second with an activity. So it's okay to let even 2 to 5-year-olds have some alone time, have some downtime in a safe environment where they're not going to get into anything. And then check back in on them every now and then. So you come back and ask, well, what are you doing? What are you working on? They love to tell you what they're thinking, what they're doing. They want that interaction. But they also need the time to think about, well, what do they want to do next?
Yeah, I love it. And it really is such a magical age. As much as I say it's hard and I'm going crazy after one day, it truly is. I have to tell you something I started to do, and I was thinking about it, and I said, maybe I should share this on the podcast. We are very blessed in that we got a lot of new toys for Christmas. I hid a bunch of them. So now in these long winter days, what I've done periodically is take one out when we're stuck inside and just, again, they're so surprised, right? Like everything is so amazing at this age. So the joy and the excitement when there's a new toy around, not that it always has to be a material thing, right? Like there's so much that we can do with them. Really in just our houses, right? And going around and finding things that are new to explore with them.
I love that. That's perfect. And that's a great example. And the toys don't even have to be new. They can just be something they haven't played with in a long time.
Yes.
So I do recommend parents think about rotating their toys out of circulation. And to the kids, to the 2 to 5-year-olds, they seem like brand new toys that they haven't seen in a while.
Can confirm, Jeff. Can confirm. So let's move on to the school age kids in the 6 to maybe 10 or 11 category. How do we keep things fun for them?
Yes. Remember 6 to 10, what life was like. We were not involved in activities every single moment. This is the age group where I really emphasize to parents, it's okay to be bored because that's the time when the creativity really, really comes out. So 6-year-olds to 10-year-olds, they understand technology. They love technology as much as everyone else. And that is their default. That's where they want to go to first. This is where parents have to lead by example and show that technology is not the first thing that we want to go to when we're stuck indoors, but instead find those hands-on projects, find those things that they can do that bring out their creativity, things that let them explore what they're thinking about, what they want to do, what they think is important in their lives. This is the time that they have a chance to explore. An activity for this age group that I think parents would love and really could do is actually pull out photo albums. This is a perfect time to start showing them what they look like when they were little, because they love seeing that. Who else is in their family that may look like them, places they've gone. They love going through those memories. And you can just sit them in front of those pictures and those books for a long time. And maybe even say, why don't you make something with some of these pictures? Or why don't you draw something with these pictures? This is a time to let them just explore and remember and have the time to just be kids without a set routine for a good part of the day, but still give them whatever structure that you can.
Yeah. Jeff, I'm going to make another confession as you are talking about photo albums. I don't print photos anymore. I have albums on my phone. So when my 3-year-old wants to see photos of himself, his friends, his cousins, he'll ask me for my phone. And now as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking, gosh, I'm missing a bit of an opportunity here. I could be printing those photos, which is actually very inexpensive nowadays. And maybe the first step is to make the album, and then it can be something he references later on. One more thing that actually comes to mind is I wonder if we can use that as an opportunity to talk about grandparents and great-grandparents, knowing that not all of our family is here in this country. For example, in our family, Jeff, I don't know, you're just giving me ideas.
Thank you. I think it is important to think about our family and our history and do an actual project with your kids to remind them who their grandparents, great-grandparents, where their family comes from is a wonderful way to spend that time you have together.
All right, Jeff, and you have plenty of experience in this category as well. What can we do with our teenagers?
Ooh, our teenagers, I tell parents, if we didn't care so much about their future, they'd be super easy to raise, right? They're independent. They can feed themselves. They can do all the things they need to do. But we as parents of teens can just watch the train wreck happening. And we hope that we can avoid it any way that we can. But the truth is teens are just filled with so many ideas and thoughts that if they're willing to share them with you, can really surprise us. And they're willing to share them if we give them the time to do that. They have to be away from technology because, of course, if they're texting and interacting with their friends, they don't want to interact with us. We can give them time limits of how much to do with technology, which is really, really difficult, especially if you haven't been doing that before. The thing that I did with our boys when they were younger and through teenage years was actually have a token system. When it comes to games, I think you're old enough to know about arcades, right?
Yes, I am.
And putting money in machines, and when your money ran out, you were done playing. Kids today, unfortunately, they have unlimited opportunity to play. They're not putting coins in machines anymore, so they keep playing. What we did with our boys was create a token system for whatever chore, activity, reading, something that we deemed worthy. We would give them a token, and they could spend that token on playing games. That was a way for us to kind of balance out how much time in front of a screen versus how much time doing things off of a screen we had our boys do. So that's one thing for teenagers. The other thing is tap into their creativity. They can make videos. They can make, again, stop motion animation. They can edit their year, how it's been so far. There's a lot of creative things that they can do, with a caveat that if they're posting on social media, you want to have some awareness of what they're actually posting. Snow days and stuck-in days are a really good time to do a project with your teenager that may involve social media.
I love that. And it's a way to be part of it with them and understand a little bit what kinds of things they want to make and post and what they're seeing and the responses that they're getting when they're posting, definitely. So, Jeff, you touched on this, but I'd love to talk a little bit more about the use of screens and finding a balance, right? I do have to tell you, I'm making lots of confessions today. I guess that's the mood I'm in. But I do give myself a little bit of a pass to be a little bit more flexible and allow a little bit more screen time than I usually do when we're stuck inside. I think when we're stuck inside and everyone's healthy, I try for that to happen less, right? If we're stuck inside because, for example, he came home sick from school or something like that, then I give myself a little bit more of a pass. How do you recommend, you talked about teenagers, but in the younger age groups, how would you recommend that we strike that balance?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought up about being healthy, because you're right. A sick day is very different than a snow day. And here in Austin, we had a freeze a few years ago where people lost power, and those happen too. And those situations, of course, are very, very different. You adjust and adapt to whatever the situation calls for. But for little kids and for those who can use screens, yes, parents have to absolutely forgive themselves for needing a break, for taking some time off. Again, be the example. If you look up and realize that you've been on your device for 3 hours and haven't really interacted with anyone, then that's exactly what your children see. Whatever we can do to break up that time, to give ourselves a little bit of screen time, a little bit of interaction, a little bit of other activities, that is very, very healthy and the best way to do it. You have to eat 3 times a day. So that's the perfect time to stop and say, what should we make today? How should we make it? Can you help me? And that can break up the screen time very easily.
Yeah, I love that. I also have found, Jeff, that I have to be very concrete. We're going to watch one episode. And after the one episode, we are turning this off. You're allowed to cry about it. That's totally allowed, right? But we are still turning it off after the one episode. So I've had to be a little bit prescriptive and concrete about some of the things that we're going to allow and the things that we're not going to allow.
And Edith, that's exactly what we did with the tokens. That's the same thing, right? When you set a limit to how much screen time, whether it's artificial because we're setting a timer or it's practical because the battery ran out, the more limits we can set, the more structure we give to our screen time. I think kids in the long run are healthier for that.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Jeff, let's say that we tried all of these things, right? We tried activities, we tried a limit on screen time, we're using it, but we're finding balance. And yet everyone at home is losing their minds.
What?
I know. Shocking, right? What are some warm places, Jeff, in our communities that we could look into potentially bringing our kiddos?
So libraries are always a great adventure. I recommend.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah, and there are some cities that have fantastic, even magical libraries that have views that you just wouldn't imagine unless you went there. So a library is a fantastic place to take the family to spend some time there. There are other places that may not seem quite as kid-friendly, but there's lots of things to look and see. And there's actually some coffee shops. You can get your kid hot chocolate. Well, you get a hot chocolate yourself or whatever you want to drink and just people watch. One thing my wife and I love to do, and we did it when our kids were younger too, was make up stories about the people that we see walking around.
I love that.
And you can ask your kids, so you see that person over here, what do you think they're here for? What do you think they're doing? And it just starts a conversation that would not have happened if you were stuck inside the house.
Yeah, I love that. I have to tell you, and maybe this applies across the country, here in the city, I love going to museums, and I've found they can be a little pricey, right? But what I've found is that not only is there days that are free for residents, right? Which I think is true in many cities across this country, but also towards the end of the day, when they're an hour away from closing, a lot of museums stop charging. So if all you need is an hour to take a break and go do something and let them run around somewhere else other than your house.
Yes.
Museums are also a great place in my experience.
Yes. And as you mentioned that, you have to remember about your friends too, right? So you're not the only parent struggling. It might be worth a call, depending how hectic the world is. Can you meet for a bit at your place and then come over here, later in the day? But that's what friends are for, right? To share a little bit of the struggle.
Oh, yes. I have a little comfy couch where my girlfriends and I relax while the kids go crazy. So yes, definitely. Now, Jeff, let's say that we do want to venture into the outdoor world in these super cold temperatures. Yeah. What are some tips to keep everyone safe?
Good. And it's important to know, especially for babies, and this was always the idea, and you have lots of grandparents saying those babies need to be bundled up. The truth is, whatever layers of clothes you need, that's what your children need typically. So the time in the weather really should reflect how comfortable you are. Don't send your kids out by themselves because then you have no idea what they're going through. But you go out, hang out with your kids, make a snowman, look at icicles, take pictures now. That's a great way to pay attention to your environment and be out in your environment. But don't be afraid to go outside, but of course use common sense. If it's too cold, too windy, too wet, too uncomfortable for you, it's too uncomfortable for your children.
Yeah, definitely. And those regular breaks as well become so, so important. Jeff, as we come to the end of our show, we like to end every episode with what we call a parenting prescription. So when it comes to finding balance on days spent inside, what is one thing you want all parents to remember?
The one thing I'd love every parent to remember is aim for every hour on the screen, there's an hour doing something else. That's just kind of the easiest and simplest rule to remember. If we pay attention to how much time we're spending in one activity, it can help us to do better with the other activities that are more enriching. And I would like to add to that too, again, be gentle and kind on yourself. Like there's no one right way to parent. There's so many different opportunities, and kids will absolutely remember the time you spend with them and not in front of the screen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff Hutchinson, for joining us today.
My pleasure. It was great seeing you, Edith.
You as well. And thank you at home for joining us. If you like the Healthy Children podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and help us spread the word. Follow Healthy Children on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Healthy Children AAP. And be sure to visit healthychildren.org, the parenting website of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Healthy Children is a production of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Our creative team includes
Laura Alessio,
Catherine Beard,
Garrett Brown,
Zach Christman,
Ann Johnsos,
Kathy Jewell,
Doug Nagel,
Jackie Ortega,
Susan Stevens Martin,
Mary Claire Walsh,
Hannah Weston.
And our theme music was composed by Doug Nagel. We'll be back next week. I'm Dr. Edith Bracho-Sanchez. Thanks for listening.